4 hours. That's how long the Food and Drug Administration gives your refrigerator once the power quits. 4 hours before the milk, the meat, the leftovers, everything on that top shelf crosses 40 degrees and starts growing something you do not want your kids eating. 24 to 48 for the freezer if you are lucky and the door stays shut. That is it. That is the window most folks do not know they are on the clock inside of, and by the time they figure it out, breakfast tomorrow is a garbage bag and a smell they will remember. Here's what makes it worse. The 2003 Northeast blackout took out 50 million people, some of them for 2 full days. Hurricane Maria left parts of Puerto Rico dark for months. Winter Storm Uri did Texas for the better part of a week. Weeks, not hours, is the number the grid actually hands you when it hands you a bad day. The Centers for Disease Control numbers say 48 million foodborne illness cases a year, 128,000 hospitalizations, 3,000 deaths. The grid does not care about your schedule, and what nobody tells you is that the fix is not a generator you cannot afford and cannot fuel. It is not a $400 emergency fridge from an internet ad. The fix is a stack of cheap, old-school moves that folks have been using since before your granddad was born, and one of them cost about $3 in terracotta and sand. No power, no fuel, no compressor. Just food that stays cold or cool enough for days into weeks, long after your neighbor's freezer is a science project. This video is 7 of them, every one under 30 bucks. Every one you can set up this weekend with what is at the hardware store on the way home. And the last one, the $3 one, is the trick that actually does the heavy lifting when the grid stays down. Let me say one thing, then I'll leave it be. Everything I've picked up behind that counter, how to buy right the first time, what's worth your money and what ain't, I put it all in one book over at rhettcallahan.com. If you want it, it's there. That's all. Now, let's get back to it. So here is what the prepper YouTube channels will not put in the title. One trick on this list cost about $3. 2 clay pots and a bag of sand from the garden aisle at Lowe's. It will keep eggs, cheese, greens, and butter cool for weeks in the dead of summer with 0 power, 0 fuel, and 0 moving parts. It has been keeping food in the Sahara for 1,000 years, and it works on a workbench in a Tennessee shed the same way it works in the desert. I am saving it for the end on purpose because every other trick on this list buys you days, and that one buys you weeks. The reason you have never heard of it? It does not look good on camera. There is no chrome, no app, no tactical logo. Half the folks selling you the $400 blackout fridge never once kept a pound of meat cold with anything but a plug. Cool gets the click. Cheap gets the job done. They want you dependent on their shipping containers. I want you ahead of the curve. I am Rhett Callahan. I run projects at a custom rifle shop, so I live around folks who plan for the days the grid does not cooperate. I got serious about this the summer our transformer blew, and I watched my freezer sweat for 2 days with my kids' food inside it. I did not buy a gadget. I read the FDA rules and did the homework. The priorities of survival doctrine says shelter, then water, then food. We are locking in that third pillar today. So here's where we are going. 7 ways preppers keep food cold for days into weeks with 0 electricity. What each one is, what is at stake if you do not have it, what it costs, and where at the hardware store to get it before you leave the parking lot. We take them in the order a working household actually needs them. Keep the cold you already have first, then buy yourself days with cheap ice, then tap into the ground and the water around your house for weeks. Some you have heard, a couple you have not, and the last one is the $3 trick. The question is not whether I own a freezer. It is when the power quits at 10 at night, can I still feed my family safely on Thursday? Once you see that, you cannot unsee it. Let us get to work. Power quits. 9 o'clock at night, storm cell rolled through, transformer is done. Everybody in the house shrugs. The fridge is still cold, right? Wrong. Clock is ticking. By 1 in the morning, your milk is already at 42 degrees. By breakfast, the ground beef is sweating out the vacuum pack. And by lunch tomorrow, you are bagging up $80 of meat and dairy for the curb. The 2003 Northeast blackout ran 2 days in some places. 50 million people. Almost all of them opened the fridge just to check every 20 minutes and watch their food die faster. The FDA number is flat. About 4 hours in an unopened fridge, 24 in a half-full freezer, 48 if it is packed tight. Above 40 degrees for more than 4 hours and perishable food gets pitched. Not because it looks bad, but because the danger zone starts at 40. That is not scare copy, that is the agency line. This is the first layer of the whole game. Keep the cold you already paid for. A refrigerator is just an insulated box. You bought it working, now you make it work harder for free with stuff in your linen closet. Grab every wool blanket, sleeping bag, and heavy comforter in the house. Drape them over the top and down the sides of the fridge and the chest freezer both. Roll towels along the bottom seam where the compressor used to breathe. Cost is $0. Time is 11 minutes. You just doubled, sometimes tripled the safe window. Second move is 2 rolls of foil face foam board from Lowe's, about $11 a piece, cut to the top and sides. $22, 1 utility knife, and you own a passive ice chest the size of a fridge. $0, twice the window. Name the emergency gadget that does that. But blankets only get you so far, because at some point the cold inside runs out and you need to add cold you did not have to start with. That is the next one, and it is the difference between 3 days of safe food and 6. It is the cheapest ice you will ever own, and half of it is already in your recycling bin. Second morning of the outage. Fridge is warming up, blankets or no blankets. You have got 2 ribeyes, a pound of ground chuck, a gallon of milk, and half a block of cheddar you paid actual money for. You are staring at it. You know if you leave it in the box, it is gone by dinner, and you are doing the math on driving 20 miles to a gas station that probably does not have power either. Meanwhile, the guy on Instagram is selling you a Grizzly cooler for $350 rated for 10 days. You do not have $350, you have Thursday. Here is the honest math. A roto-molded Grizzly-type cooler will hold ice 5 to 7 days in shade. A 60-quart Igloo from Walmart at $40 will hold ice 2 to 3 days under the same rules. For most outages, 2 to 3 days is the whole event. This is the delay layer. Buy cold, stretch it, then buy more. The premium cooler is a great tool. It is also 7 times the price for maybe twice the performance, and nobody in this house tells you that in a promo code. Basic 60-quart Igloo or Coleman at Walmart, $40. 3 bags of ice at a gas station, $2.50 each, $7.50 total. Total under $50 and you have got a working refrigerator on the workbench. Pack it right. Block ice on the bottom, meat in sealed bags on top of that, dairy above the meat, cubes filling every air gap. Keep it in the shade, off the concrete on a pallet or a couple of 2x4s. Open it once a day, not once an hour. That is 3 days of safe food guaranteed. $50. 3 days, not 300. But bag ice runs out and gas stations run dry, and the next trick does not need either. It is already sitting under your feet, it is free forever, and it is the reason folks kept butter cool in 1890 without a compressor within 100 miles. It is how Puerto Rico ate through months of no power. It costs about $10 in a bucket. Week 2 of a real outage. The bag ice is a memory. Every store in town is either closed, cleaned out, or the parking lot is a fight you do not want your kids in. You have got potatoes, cabbage, apples, hard cheese, a dozen eggs, and no way to keep them from turning into compost on the counter. This is the scenario Puerto Rico lived through after Hurricane Maria. Some rural neighborhoods went 6 to 11 months without stable grid power. The folks who ate through it best were not the ones with generators. They were the ones who knew what temperature the dirt is. 4 feet down in most of the country, the ground stays between 50 and 60 degrees year-round. That is not refrigerator cold, it is root cellar cold, and it is the reason your grandparents kept apples from October to March in a hole in the yard. It will not keep raw beef safe long term. It will keep eggs, root vegetables, cabbage, hard cheese, jams, cured pork, and butter for weeks to months. This is delay taken to its logical end. You stop fighting the heat and just move the food to where the heat is not. One food-grade 5-gallon bucket with a tight-fitting lid from Home Home Depot, about $7. One lid clip, $2. Dig a hole in the shadiest corner of the yard, north side of the house is best, deep enough to bury the bucket to the rim. Line the bottom with a couple inches of dry sand or straw. Load it. Eggs pointy end down, root veg loose, cheese wrapped in wax paper. Snap the lid, cover the lid with a piece of plywood and a scrap of carpet against the sun. $10, one afternoon, no power required. $10, weeks of eggs, and a hole in your yard the neighbors will never see. But that only works for the tough stuff. For meat, the good stuff, the freezer meat, you need real cold, not cool. And the next trick keeps a freezer freezing for twice as long without adding a single degree of electricity. It is sitting in your recycling bin right now. February 2021, Texas, Winter Storm Uri hits. Millions of houses go dark, most of them for 1 to 4 days, some longer. Here's the part folks forgot in the freeze coverage. The outdoor cold saved a lot of freezers, but the indoor freezers that had nothing but air between the meat and the door thawed anyway once the house cooled and then the sun came back. $400 of meat ruined. Not because the outage was that long, but because the freezer was not packed to hold cold. Empty air is a bad friend when the compressor quits. The physics is simple and it is your friend. A full freezer holds cold roughly twice as long as a half-empty one. That is straight from the United States Department of Agriculture. Water is the cheapest thermal battery on the planet. 1 calorie per gram per degree to warm, and it fights every degree of warming with every ounce of mass in the box. Every empty inch of your freezer is a slow leak. Fill it with water in bottles you already own, and the same freezer that used to give you 24 hours now gives you 48, sometimes more. Save every 2-liter soda bottle, every gallon milk jug, every clean juice container. Wash them out. Fill them 3/4 full, not to the top. Water expands when it freezes and blows the cap. Screw the lids on and stack them in every empty corner of your freezer, upright. Cost is zero. Ongoing cost is still zero. When an outage hits, half those bottles come out into the cooler on the workbench as block ice that lasts 3 times longer than gas station cubes. Same bottle, 2 jobs, forever. Total dollars is whatever tap water costs where you live. $0. Double the freezer window. And free block ice on demand. You are still here. Most folks clicked off already to go back to trusting a wall socket. That right there already puts you ahead of most of your street. The next one uses the same water trick on a scale that keeps a whole household of perishables cool through a summer heat wave, and it costs less than 1 bag of ice. August. Heat wave. Grid is overloaded and rolling blackouts are pulling 3 hours at a time. No warning, no schedule. The gas stations are out of ice by 10 in the morning because everybody had the same idea. Hurricane Katrina taught this. The city stayed dark for weeks, and the difference between families that ate and families that did not was not cash. It was whether they had a way to keep things cool that did not depend on a truck showing up with cubes. When the ice supply chain quits, you need coal that does not come in a bag. Water beats air on every metric that matters here. It absorbs about 4 times more heat per pound than air does, and it releases it slow. A 55-gallon barrel of water in the shade will sit at ground temperature, 50 to 65 degrees depending on your dirt, all day, every day, no matter what the thermometer on the porch says. Drop sealed containers of food into it, and they take on that temperature. It is the same principle as a spring house, which is how every farmhouse in Tennessee kept milk cold before rural electric came through in the 1940s. 2 options at any hardware store. Cheap is a 30-gallon storage tote from Walmart, $20, filled with hose water and set in deep shade on the north side of the house. Better is a 55-gallon plastic rain barrel, Home Depot, about $70. Sink your sealed jars, Ziploc bags of hard cheese, butter tubs, jars of leftovers right into the water. Weight them down with a clean rock. Change the water every 3 days in extreme heat to keep it cool. That is a whole second refrigerator running on gravity and shade for under $100 total. $20 for a tote. Same physics that fed farmhouses for 100 years. But all this cold storage is worthless if you cannot tell whether the food inside it is actually safe. The next one costs $6, fits in your pocket, and is the single thing standing between that steak is fine and a whole family in the emergency room on Sunday Saturday night. $6, and most preppers do not own one. Sunday afternoon, power has been back for 6 hours. Everybody is hungry. The chicken thighs in the fridge look fine, smell fine. You cook them for the kids, you eat with them, and Wednesday, your youngest is in the emergency room with a salmonella infection because that fridge sat at 44 degrees for 9 hours you did not know about, and the meat looked fine and smelled fine right up to the second it put a 5-year-old on a saline drip. The CDC numbers say 48 million foodborne illness cases a year, 128,000 hospitalizations, 3,000 deaths. Here is the FDA rule you cannot guess at. Above 40 degrees for 4 hours, pitch it. Below 40, it is fine. There is no in between, and there is no looks okay. The danger zone runs 40 to 140 degrees Fahrenheit, and every degree inside it doubles bacterial growth about every 20 minutes at the top of the range. Salmonella, Campylobacter, E. coli, the ones that put kids in the hospital, all live in that gap. This is the verify layer. Every other trick on this list is worth nothing if you are guessing at the number instead of reading it. Walmart, hardware aisle, $6 to $8. Buy the little analog dial thermometer that hangs on a wire hook. Buy 3. One in the fridge, one in the freezer, one that lives in your outage cooler. When the power quits, you check the number, not the smell. Above 40 for over 4 hours, meat and dairy go in the trash. Under 40, you are fine. Cook it up, feed the family, no drama. $18 total for the 3, forever. Cheaper than one visit to urgent care, cheaper than one bag of groceries you had to throw out on a guess. $18, zero guessing, a number on a dial instead of a hunch. Now, everything I just gave you handles days into a couple weeks, but what if the outage is the big one? 5 days, a hurricane, the whole freezer at risk of thawing at once. That is the last regular trick before the $3 reveal, and it is the one honest tool that costs real money because sometimes real money is the right answer. Name storm off the Gulf, 2 days out. Weather Channel says landfall Tuesday, grid restoration by Sunday, maybe. You have got a chest freezer packed with 180 pounds of hunted venison, a spring lamb, 2 turkeys, and a year's worth of vacuum-sealed berries. That is $1,500, $2,000 of food, and blankets alone are not going to carry it through 5 days of 90-degree heat with the compressor dead. This is the moment the cheap tricks are not enough. This is the moment you pay real money for the real fix, and it is still cheaper than losing what is inside that box. Dry ice is frozen carbon dioxide, negative 109 degrees Fahrenheit. 50 pounds of it dropped into a full freezer wrapped in newspaper and blankets will hold that freezer sub-freezing for about 2 full days. That is the industry number. 10 pounds a day roughly in most household freezers. It is the one grid down cold tool that costs actual money, and it is still a fraction of the meat it is protecting. This is the defend layer for cold storage. Everything else buys days. This one guards the crown jewels. The meat that took a year of hunts and grocery runs to put in there. Walmart, Kroger, Publix, most big grocers carry dry ice in a chest near the front. $2 a pound is the honest street price. 25 pounds for a 1-day storm, 50 for a 2-day, 75 if you're staring down a hurricane. Never handle it barehanded. Leather work gloves always. Wrap the blocks in newspaper, lay them on top of the food, not under. Close the lid, do not open it. $50 buys you a day. $100 buys you 2. $200 protects $2,000 of freezer meat. That math writes itself. $100. 2 days of Arctic cold. The one time paying up is the right call, instead of buying tactical junk that never saw a real outage. Now everything I just gave you is a piece of the puzzle. Blankets, coolers, buckets, bottles, water baths, thermometers, dry ice. Days to weeks of cold all told for under $200 if you buy the whole stack. But the $3 trick I promised you at the start is next, and it is the one that turns weeks into as long as you need. Alright, the $3 trick I have been holding since minute 1. Here it is, and once you see it, you will get why every other thing on this list is downstream of it. It is called a zir pot. 2 clay pots, some sand, a rag, and physics that has been keeping food edible in the Sahara Desert for 1,000 years. With 0 electricity, 0 moving parts, and 0 maintenance beyond a splash of water. You take 2 unglazed terracotta pots from the garden center at Lowe's or Home Depot. One larger, call it a 12-inch, and one smaller that nests inside with about a 2-inch gap all the way around. Plug the drain holes with silicone or a cork. Fill the gap between them with clean sand. Soak the sand with water. Put your food, eggs, cheese, butter, greens, tomatoes inside the smaller pot. Cover the whole rig with a damp cloth. Now here is what happens. The water in the sand wicks through the outer clay wall and evaporates into the air. Every drop of evaporation pulls heat with it. Field trials in low humidity climates show interior drops of 10 to 20 degrees below ambient. A 95-degree Tennessee afternoon in a shed becomes a 75-degree pot. Eggs last 3 weeks. Butter and cheese hold. Greens stay crisp 4 times longer. Every blanket, every cooler, every bucket I gave you buys you days. This buys you weeks, and it never quits, and it never asks for a plug. One larger pot, $3. One smaller pot, $2. Bag of play sand, $4. Damp cloth, whatever is in the drawer. $9 total. 3 of them for the pot that matters. Name the $400 gadget that lasts 1,000 years and never breaks. Weeks of cold, $3. Done. I will be straight with you. Most of you will never sit through a 2-week grid down event. Odds are on your side, and I hope they stay there. But most is not all, and the whole stack I just gave you, every trick comes in under $200, and half of them are free. Even if I am wrong about your street, what did it cost you? An afternoon and a shovel. So here's what you do before you go to bed tonight. 3 moves, 30 minutes, and you are already ahead of 90% of the houses on your block. Wash out 4 2-liter bottles, fill them 3/4, and put them in the freezer. That is job 1. Buy a $6 fridge thermometer next time you are at Walmart and hang it in the fridge and the freezer both. That is job 2. And this weekend, on your way home from work, swing through the garden section and pick up 2 clay pots and a bag of sand. That is job 3. Total is under $25. Total time is an afternoon. You just went from grid dependent to grid optional. Not scared, ready. Ready beats scared every single time. And you are ready now. Drop me a comment. Which one are you doing first tonight? Bottles in the freezer? Blankets on the fridge? The zir pot on Saturday? And tell me the old school one I left off. There is always something your granddad or your grandmother knew that I do not. I read every one. Do me one thing. Send this to the one person whose kids you would hate to see eating out of a bad fridge next time the grid quits. Not for me. For them, takes 10 seconds. Next one up, we go deeper. The shelf-stable foods that outlast every trick I just showed you. The ones your family will actually eat. And the one pantry mistake 9 out of 10 preppers make. Subscribe so it lands before you need it. Shoot straight, keep your powder dry, and I will see you at the counter.